good. I got good on here.
Yeah, please don't turn it on until we know. No, not yet.
Not yet.
Good evening and welcome to the work session of the River Edge Planning Board, Thursday, May 1st, 2014. I'd like to rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by sending notices on December 20, 2013 to the Record and to the Ridgewood News, by positioning the bulletin board in the lobby of Borough Hall, and by filing a notice of the same with the municipal clerk. I'd like to remind the public that there are 3 fire exits in this room, one to the left and right of the dais, and one directly behind you. Roll call vote, Arthur.
Mr. Aquafreda.
Present.
Mr. Arkelian.
Here.
Mr. Barron.
Here.
Mayor Moscaratolo. Mr. Dewar.
Here.
Mr. Glass.
Present.
Mr. Grasso.
Here.
Oh, you made it back again.
Yes.
Mr. Monroe.
Here.
And you made it back again, huh? Welcome back. Ms. Boland.
Here.
I didn't know there was a dropout rate.
We have a high dropout.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Gwartz.
Especially after 11 p.m. meetings.
Mr. Carrots.
Here.
Ms. Bogart is here, and Mr. Costa is not.
Before us tonight, the work session is to deem complete the application 2014-02.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Arkelian moved. I'm sorry, the second was Mr. Aquafreda. And roll call will be Mr. Aquafreda,
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian,
Yes.
Mr. Behrens,
Yes.
Mr. Dewar,
Yes. This is was it
Mr. Glass,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso,
Yes.
Mr. Monroe,
Yes.
Ms. Boland, Mr. Carrots.
Yes.
The motion passes. The application of Total Wine and More is deemed complete for purposes of tonight's public session.
Okay, any other comments by the board before I ask for a motion to close the work session? Okay, do I have a motion to close the work session?
So moved. Second.
And rather than take a roll call, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion passes. We are out of work session.
Okay. Thursday, May 1st, 2014, regular public session of River Edge Planning Board. You want to go through the roll call again?
I will, just so that we have it. Mr. Aquafreda?
Present.
Mr. Arkelian?
Yes.
Mr. Behrens?
Yes.
Mayor Moscaratolo? Mr. Dewar?
Here.
Mr. Glass? Mr. Grasso.
Here.
Mr. Monroe.
Here.
Ms. Boland.
Here.
Mr. Wertz. Mr. Kurtz.
Here.
And Ms. Bogart.
Here.
Okay, first act of business is the approval of the minutes from our meeting held on 3/20/2014. Hopefully everybody received them. I believe they came via email. Any comments?
Can I say that the vision-friendly minutes are welcome to us older members.
Any other comments before I ask for a... Complete? Do you have any issues?
No.
Accept the minutes?
Motion, we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Ms. Kurtz. And this is for the approval of the minutes. Mr. Acquafreda.
Yes.
Mr. Arkelian.
Yes.
Mr. Behrens.
Yes.
Mr. Dewar.
Yes.
Mr. Glass.
Yes.
Mr. Grasso.
Yes.
Mr. Monroe.
Yes.
Ms. Boland.
Yes.
And Mr. Kurtz.
Yes.
Okay, we're all here. That's fine.
Okay, now we have resolutions, application 2014-01, Korean Community Church, Block 1306, Lot 4.03, 80 Commerce Way, Hackensack, New Jersey.
You will recall this application. This was the one-story building down on Commerce Way that went before the Hackensack Zoning Board of Adjustment before coming to you. But that board granted site plan approval with a number of conditions, and the resolution of that board, the zoning board, is appended to our site plan approval resolution, assuming you adopt it, as Exhibit A. Exhibit B to the resolution is the report of Meglia Engineering dated February 12, 2014. So the entirety of the resolution consists of the resolution itself, Exhibit A and Exhibit B. This board requested, and I believe I put into the resolution, a number of conditions, not the least of which was the inclusion of Exhibit A and the conditions of that board as adopted by this board, so that there was continuity between the two communities. And that is basically, and this board voted to approve it. So I think that's really what it's all about.
Mr. Chairman, may I just make one comment?
Sure.
I noticed that the discussions with regard to that fire access on the west side was not brought up in the resolution. I think Hackensack has jurisdiction of whether that fire lane is going to remain or just going to be vegetated.
With the door on the west side?
On the west side. And I believe the board had suggested that they wanted to review anything that was going to be modified in that location.
I haven't heard anything further about that, and I think there's something in the Hackensack.
There is in the Hackensack, but I don't know if this board wants jurisdiction or at least the right to review any modifications. This should be an our resolution as well, correct?
Or simply abide the Hackensack finding?
Well, a portion of it is in River Edge.
A portion of that door?
The
That exit door?
The driveway.
In the driveway on the west side?
Yep.
So...
Then you talk about revegetating it, and we did suggest that we wanted to look at what was going to happen there if they were going to remove it. It's up to the board, I just wanted to mention it, because I noticed that was the one issue that wasn't...
That's a good point. I'm not here, okay? I'm not here. Sorry, that never happens.
Any other comments? Can you recall that conversation with the Bridget set up?
With the door? No. If it's incorporated in the Hackensack approval, it becomes part of our, because we're incorporating the Hackensack approval into ours. So I would think that they would have to file, if they violate part of the Hackensack approval, then the Borough of River Edge can act on it as well because it's incorporated in our, am I correct, Counselor?
Right, but I don't want...
They wouldn't be violating the Hackensack approval if they modified the driveway and got rid of that door. That's in their resolution right now.
Right.
The question is what happens to it if they do remove the door and the driveway.
Well, again, because we're incorporating, it was part of the Hackensack approval, correct?
That the Hackensack Fire Department has a right to review it and make changes as necessary.
All right, so then shouldn't the River Edge Fire Department be in that part of that door is within River Edge? Shouldn't that be
I
part
think that
of
was
the
approval as well. Bridget's
That's a
point
good
is that
point.
At least
Not only
we...
that, and also what happens to that area when, if the driveway is removed, is there landscapes, is there a fence there, is there food, what happens? I think at least the borough engineer should be reviewing what is approved section into that area.
Well, because that wasn't part of their approval, if they make that change, wouldn't they have to come back here for a new site plan approval?
That's right. Good question. I don't think so.
I don't think so either. It would be a de minimis change, I expect, but the only concern is a safety concern, it seems to me, more than anything else. As Bridget says, it's really up to the board whether you want to, I mean, we can certainly incorporate a provision, an additional condition.
What would be the downside if we did that?
One, the applicant could object to the inclusion of a condition that it was unaware of, or, I mean, clearly the applicant is not here.
Right.
So we would be springing this condition. I can't imagine that it's going to present any major problem to the applicant because the applicant was very cooperative and wanted to play by all the rules.
Right.
So I can't imagine that would be a problem. Legally speaking, I don't think there's any real downside. It's just a question of what the board wants to do, impose, and what you think is best for River Edge, apart from what they think is best for Hackensack.
Bridget, was your point, though, the fact that whatever changes are made, that we're just in the loop? Is that really that, as long as just...
That's the first step. The second step is you have a right to modify any changes or at least review them in case you don't like what occurs. Because as it is, it's just Hackensack has the right to modify it, which might be fine, but at least River Edge is in the loop, as you mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe that's more the concern, that obviously they're going to do, but we just want to know about it, so that, our fire department...
Yeah,
you know,
no, I think it's
if on the
a great
blueprints
point.
there's a door there, and there's a fire, and they go there, and there's no door, that's a problem.
You know, if they have an issue with it, then let them come back and we'll discuss it. Otherwise,
At the provision.
right, we should include it. Again, I think because it's part of Hackensack's, I think technically it probably should be part of ours anyway, because it's the same, except they have it listed that Hackensack Fire Department will review it. They don't have it as the River Edge
Right,
Fire
but
Prevention will
correct
review
me
it.
if I'm wrong on this, Jim. If Hackensack makes any kind of modification, they would do so in connection with a fire code. It's not they would have some negative animus toward the applicant. They would just be doing something
I
that would be
agree,
in accordance
absolutely, yeah.
with what would be considered appropriate for a fire code or
Right.
compliance with the fire code. So, and I would assume that the River Edge Board or the River Edge Fire Department would do the same thing. So, I understand your point. What Bridget is saying is, do we want to have an extra measure of control over what the applicant does in response to the Hackensack Fire Department? I think that's really what it boils down
Is
to.
it control, or is it just... Again,
Review.
I'm not articulating it
Review.
right, but because again, I would think as a fireman, that would be a major issue. If on the blueprints there's a door there, and in 2 years from now, there's not.
And I think we're erring on the side of caution.
Right, I think
So I think it's a good idea to be included.
Like if they do anything, that our fire department is advised that they're changing that area. Because again, it would be a, like I said...
It's who's first responders in case of an emergency.
Right, but just say,
So therefore,
you
yeah,
get there,
you
and
need
it's
to-
nothing
yeah,
major,
you
but,
need to protect
I mean,
yourself.
there was a door there 2 years ago, whatever.
Right.
Right. No, good point, Bridget, and I think we should include it.
Thank you.
Good point, Jim.
You just earned your money for tonight.
I'm going home.
Not yet,
I missed this. It's much more fun than the other day.
But we're going to have 2 meetings this month, Vito, so you get it in again.
So how does this sound? I'm just doing this off the cuff. In the event that the Hackensack Fire Department imposes any condition on the site, or do you want to limit it to the door, or what?
Why limit it?
Yeah, keep it vague, right?
Any condition on the site, the River Edge Fire Department will have the right to also review and comment or to impose.
Yeah, just review it, as long as they know about it,
Okay.
as long as they're just in the loop. I
To
can't
also
pay attention to
review,
words,
notice, all right, is essential. All right, so what I think I will do is, with your permission, a couple of things. If you find the resolution as drafted acceptable, I will, A, circulate language to you via email for inclusion into this resolution as an additional condition. B, assuming I hear nothing from you, I don't want you to be emailing each other with language changes. If you have any issue with the language that I've drafted, email back to me alone, not to anybody else, and I'll let everybody know. And then C, I will cause the approval, this resolution, to be amended accordingly for that condition, so that at the end of the day, what is in the borough is this resolution with the amendment that you folks approve.
We can still pass the memorialization this evening?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, because I don't want to make them wait.
Right.
Yeah, because it's an amendment that we will all have agreed, that you will all have agreed on, and, it's just a matter of formality.
Okay. Any other comments on the memorialization?
Is there going to be something in that that's, other than reviewing, any
that's what we
authority to,
Discuss.
discuss and recommend changes, or it's just a review and there's no authority behind it to...
Well, I think what the chair has said, that as long as our fire, and I assume Mr. Arakelian as well, as long as our fire department knows what the Hackensack Fire Department has done or imposed or otherwise changed, that would be sufficient. What you're asking, I think, is if there is such a change, can River Edge react to it or impose any further condition on the applicant?
Right, that's what I'm asking.
Right now, the way I have it written, it's really review. It's not really a question of whether or not, as Bridget has suggested, that we could have the extra power, but that's up to you guys. It's not...
Well, I prefer it as written, I just, as long as we're kept
Yeah, I think it's
aware.
okay the way it is.
Review should be sufficient. We don't
Right.
need to impose any additional qualifications.
Hackensack Fire Prevention is second to none.
Right.
They know what they're doing, they're professionals, they're paid.
All right, so if you're okay with that, then again, I'll float the revised language around, and I just ask respectfully that if I do that, that you respond if you're going to within, a brief period of time, like a day or two, rather than, come back to me later, because I just want to keep things moving. It's fair. It will be fair to the applicant, and I would expect I'll be doing that tomorrow. So if I do it tomorrow and send it to you, if I don't hear from you by Monday, I'm going to assume that everybody is on board with the language, no changes, and we'll just do it that way. It'll be fair to the applicant that way. Is that okay with everybody?
Yep.
Okay, no other comments with that? Do we have a motion to accept the memorialization as, with the amendment as drafted by Arthur?
So moved.
Mr. Arakelian, that was you.
I'll second it.
Mr. Aquafredo, that was you. Mr. Aquafreda?
Yes.
Mr. Arakelian?
Yes.
Mr. Behrens?
Yes.
Excuse me, yes.
Yes.
That was a yes?
That was a yes.
Get it out, you know? Mr. Dewar?
Yes.
Mr. Glass?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Ms. Boland?
Yes.
And Mr. Kiritz?
Yes.
Motion passes. I'll circulate that language to you guys tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, now to application 2014-02, Total Wine and More, Block 1404, lots 1.04, 5, and 301.
Good evening, Chairman. Timothy Corriston from the law firm of Connell Foley for the applicant Total Wine.
Spell your last name.
Sure, Corriston. If I could maybe give a brief overview, Chairman.
Thank you.
This goes back to October 18th, 2007. I know I believe you were here, I was here, and you were here. And the long tortured history of this property, going back a long time. Anyway, as you can see, things are starting to happen. Total Wine is preparing to open, and an issue came up back in 2007. There was some preliminary approval given for the signs, and variances granted for 3 signs. And since then, Total Wine has modified its signs and uniformly and using the same signs across the country, and they wanted to come in and ask for a slight modification. One thing that does need clarification, and when we walk you through it, you understand it. The present signs total footage is actually less than what's the proposed total footage is about 29 feet less than what's previously approved. And the reason being that in the resolution, when it was written, it referred to the signs as being 3 foot by 20 foot, and then it says, and or likewise depicted on Exhibit A14. That was talking, when the 3 foot by 20 foot was spoken about the hearing, that was the size of the lettering, all right? But we actually have the original exhibits, and you'll see it was Total Wine, and then there was and more below it. So the actual dimensions of the sign was greater than recorded, as you'll see on A14, which was what was initially approved. So we'll walk you through that. Myself and Mr. Neese have talked about that, but it wasn't an error. It was just saying what the testimony was regarding the lettering. But if you actually look at the signs, Exhibit A14, which was approved, you'll see that there was additional lettering below the Total Wine, and that the actual dimensions were different than 3 by 20. And we'll go through that with our expert to explain that to you. So we're seeking for a variance under the comprehensive sign ordinance, and we'll go through under all the conditions, and obviously your expert has issued a report also, and we'll explain the basis for it, but I think it's important to realize what was actually originally approved as depicted on the exhibit. I realize that signs are always an issue for towns. This is obviously a very, very large building. It's the centerpiece of the new development, and in some respects, our centerpiece of the retail district of the town. I think given the size of the buildings and the to have the appropriate visibility for people traveling, I hope you'll find it appropriate and let us have this small modification. So that's just by way of introduction. All right. Before we start, I am going to hand out a small summary. Steve, what would you like me to mark it?
Sometimes I get confused. Would you mind for just a second?
Sure.
In other towns where I serve as the planning board attorney, we essentially pre-mark exhibits. The application would be deemed A1, the proof of service would be deemed A2, the affidavit of publication would be A3, and so on and so forth. I haven't put that process into place yet, but I am going to do that so that you will have pre-marked exhibits, A through whatever. And that's why I hesitated with Mr. Corriston, because we've not employed that procedure up till now. So for the sake of maintaining the order that this board has, Mr. Corriston, I would ask that you mark whatever it is as A1.
In addition to what you...
When I create the resolution, whether it's of approval or denial, I will include all of the exhibits that comprise the record in the file of this matter, and then we'll add that.
Okay.
Whatever you mark tonight.
So I'll start with A1.
A1 is fine.
Thank you.
And if you could just tell us for the record again what A1
Yes,
is going to be.
this is a signed summary that we prepared. I'll hand you the original, and then I'll pass them out to everyone.
Tim, you got an extra for me?
Sure.
Thank you.
Mr. Carson, just so that we're clear, who prepared this signed summary?
The signed summary was prepared both by myself and Mr. Santini.
Sir, just quickly, can you just give a copy? Did Brigitte get a copy
Yes.
as well on this? Okay, so does this concur with what you have on your document dated on the April 15th?
It'll be different, and we'll explain it, and then
Okay.
maybe we can address it at that time. I'd like to call as our first witness Martin Santini from the Michaels and Waldron firm. Do you want to bring up the board, please? Let me put it here so everybody can see. A little back further. Mr. Santini, would you... Yes, go ahead.
Sir, may I ask you, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give this board will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Would you please state your full name, and if I could ask you to bring that microphone over to you, that might be more helpful.
In front of Tom.
You could take the stand, put it down.
Actually, you know what? That one will pick them both up. If they have a question, they won't be able to get heard.
Okay, and I'll move it over.
Yeah, that's okay. That'll pick them both up.
Okay.
Is this the first time we've done this?
So, Mr. Santini, would you please state your full name and business affiliation for the record?
Martin Santini. I'm a licensed architect and a licensed professional planner, and I am a consultant, architect and planner for Michaels and Waldron Architects of Riverdale, New Jersey.
And will you be, in what capacity will you be testifying
As a
here?
licensed planner.
As a planner.
Yes.
And you want to, what year the witness?
Would you, have you been previously accepted as a planner in this municipality?
Yes, I have. On 3 different occasions, I have been accepted as an architect and a planner on a couple of applications that come to mind. One was the Christine Balmain store when they did their addition. Another one was the Boodles restaurant, which is now called Dinello's. They came in for site plan approval for their renovations and addition. And there was one other application that I did, and I just can't remember it offhand right now.
Are you a licensed planner?
Yes, I am.
And what are your educational and professional
I have a
qualifications?
Bachelor of Architecture degree from Ohio State University. I have a Master of Architecture and a Master of Urban Planning from the University of California at Berkeley. I've been practicing architecture and planning in New Jersey for the last 40 years.
The board will accept your credentials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Santini, could you show the board what was A14, when Exhibit A14, the prior application back in 2007?
Yes. This is a sheet that's identified as drawing number A2, prepared by Michaels and Waldron Architects. And what it illustrates is 3 or 4 facades, 3 of which have signs and are the subject of this particular application. This drawing illustrates the plan, which shows the outline of the retail store or the Total Wine store, which is approximately 29,500 square feet. And the top elevation is the east elevation, illustrating the sign that says Total Wine and More. The second elevation is the south elevation, which faces Main Street. And this elevation indicates the sign that says Total Wine and More, and I'll get into the actual details.
Which way is north on your plan?
North is straight up.
Thank you.
Here, it's marked here. That was probably in front of it where you couldn't see it. So anyway, the second elevation, which faces Main Street, has a Total Wine and More sign that was originally submitted, as well as the western elevation, the one that's sort of on the angle here and directly straight, also has a sign that's located on the corner. And I'll get into the actual details of those particular signs and their sizes.
Just so the record's clear, A14 from the original application consisted of A1 and A2. We have A1. Can you just show A1 briefly? It has nothing to do with time.
Okay. A1 was also submitted, which was a smaller drawing of the retail store, which, as you know, both buildings are under construction currently. And it didn't have any signs, so to speak, that were actual signs that were going to be applied for. It just gave designations as to where the signs would most likely be proposed.
At the risk of confusing matters a little bit, I think what we would like to do is mark these for tonight's meeting as separate exhibits. I know I recognize it's going to get a little confusing, but
So,
however you want to do it, Mr. Carson, is fine, but
You want to do A1 as the first one?
are you going to be using in your testimony the A1?
no.
So if you want to mark A2 as tonight's A2,
Good.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Should have wrote on it first.
I'll do it. It's okay.
So this A2 is, for the record, on the approved site plan, and it's a portion of the original A14.
And it is duly marked as Exhibit A2 with today's date on it.
and it was originally 7/23/07. That was the date of the drawing.
Yes, 7/23/07 is actually on there.
No revised.
No revised.
Okay.
Now, so, let's start at the top. What elevation is that?
This is the east elevation, which is the elevation that faces the parking lot. This is the principal entrance into the Total Wine store.
Okay, so that, at the time of the original approval, the Total and Wine were, one was on top of the other, correct?
That's correct.
And,
It had a sign size of approximately 8 feet by 15 feet, or an actual 120 square feet, which was originally
8 feet vertical, and, I'm sorry, 15 vertical.
8 feet vertically, 15 feet horizontally.
And the new application is, the Total Wine
Is stretched out, and I can show you the actual detail. If we can, we should go right into the actual sign that's proposed and has been submitted.
let's mark this, right?
Sure.
Let's make it clear what we're marking. the board, I received in my packet, Mr. Carson, documents that look like what you have on the easel now, but I've got 3 of them.
Yeah, I have
Right,
3 of them.
very good.
All right, so you want to mark however you
These
want
are
to...
larger copies of what you have.
A3 will be the east elevation. Yes.
Okay, the Exhibit A3 is the east elevation, the sign that's going to be on the facade. Let's go and mark the other 3, there are 2.
Yes, we might as well do them, yes, A4 and A5.
Right.
So A4 will be south, you have south next?
A4 would be the south elevation, that's correct.
The south elevation faces what highway or street?
Main.
Main, okay.
And here's A5, will be the west elevation.
And that's essentially the Route 4 sign?
Yes, that's the one that's to the faces Route 4, to the eastbound motorists, basically.
All right, can we go back to A2, please? And so, I hope that everybody can see the colors a little better. So, just want to say, it's the total, and then it was wine, and then there was the and more
Right.
added, and there was this. And if you look on the diagram, you see the actual 3 foot that was referred to erroneously in the resolution was the size of the lettering of the T for the total wine. That's where the 3 foot came from. All right, so
that sign, as I originally just stated, that sign was approved at 8 feet by 15 feet in length, and the total area is 120 square feet.
all right, now bring us to the proposed store sign for the main parking lot.
So now for the east facade. So in the concurrent east facade, you're going to see, and I believe everyone has a copy of the actual new brand logo that Total Wine has embarked upon for all of their stores nationally. And what it is it's Total with the grape display and the wine, and then it has Spirit, Fear, and More. And these are face-lit, internally illuminated channel letters that will be mounted on the facade. This particular sign for the main entrance, right over the main entrance, is 130 square feet. And its dimensions are 5 foot 6.5 inches by 23 feet 5 inches.
Okay. How about the south elevation,
Yes.
please?
The south elevation is the sign that faces Main Street, which leads out onto Route 4. And this particular sign is, again, a face-lit, internally illuminated channel letter type sign. All the signs are harmonious in that they are all exactly the same in their content and their description. This sign is also 130 square feet, and its dimension is exactly the same. It's 5 feet 6.5 inches by 23 feet 5 inches for a total of 130 square feet.
So it's identical to the east elevation?
It's identical to the east elevation.
And it's larger than the prior, slightly larger than the prior south elevation sign, correct?
Actually, it's exactly the same size, pretty much, as the...
No, they came...
Well, no, the south elevation before was 6.5
Oh, okay.
feet by 20 feet.
So what's the total square footage for the...
For the proposed sign, the proposed south elevation sign is 130 square feet.
And how much is the prior sign?
130 square feet.
Okay. All right, so now, if we could go to the west elevation, and where does the west elevation face?
The west elevation is facing the rear portion of Route 4, if you will. Obviously, Route 4 goes out on an angle, And since this building is an irregularly shaped building on an irregularly shaped parcel, this is the rear portion of the building that would be the back of the building, and we're requesting that we have a sign placed in this particular location, which is 91 square feet. Now that sign, the proposed sign for the west elevation is 4 feet, 7 7/8 inches by 19 feet, 6 1/4 inches, for a total area of 91 square feet. The previous sign for this elevation was 6 feet 5 inches, or I'm sorry, 6.5 feet by 20 feet for an area of 130 square feet. So the proposed sign is less than the previously approved sign, if I can use those words.
All right, now, did you familiarize yourself with the comprehensive sign ordinance?
Yes, I did.
And that has a provision for variances for signs?
Yes, it does. Let me just, first of all, I believe that the comprehensive sign ordinance gives this board the authority to review situations like this where the design is going to be, that would be more complementary to the architectural character of the buildings that are going to be where the signs will be placed. The comprehensive sign ordinance has 4 criteria that must be addressed as the planning board must consider. And the first one is the extent of the variation. Now, the signs, although being larger in dimension for all 3 signs, basically, there is less area that we are requesting for the total sign package that we have.
Than previously approved?
Than previously approved, that's correct. So I don't believe that the variation is of any great significance to what was previously approved. The second part of the criteria for the comprehensive sign design ordinance is the effect of signs on neighboring properties. Now, I don't believe, in my opinion, that this would have any negative or detrimental impact to any of the surrounding properties. The sign that faces the parking lot is really appropriately sized with the scale and character of the building, and I'll get into that in the next step. And I believe that since the area is all commercial, directly related to this particular parcel and this site, and the surrounding area is basically all commercial in nature, including the area that faces Route 4, which has 2 visibilities to it. Although there is a residential area that's way behind the subject property, I believe there's some garden apartments that are behind it. It is my opinion that the signage, as proposed, will not be detrimental or have any negative impact on the surrounding properties. The third requirement that's outlined in the comprehensive sign ordinance is that the proportion of the sign area to the proportion of the wall where the sign is located. So let's take, for instance, this is the facade. That's the east facade, and the total area of the sign is 130 square feet. The total size of this facade is 6,660 square feet. So the sign only represents 2% of that particular area. So I don't think it has any kind of a negative impact. Same thing with the south. With the south elevation. That elevation...
Mr. Santini, I'm sorry, what was the percentage that you... 2%?
Actually, 1.95%, so 2%.
Sorry, thank you.
And on the Main Street elevation, or the south elevation, the sign is, again, 130 square feet, as I earlier testified to. The facade area, the total area of the facade is 6,255 square feet. And if you do the math, it comes out to 2%. So the signs are really pretty small in comparison to the elevation and size of the facade. And the same thing with the westerly facade. That facade is 6,873 square feet, and the sign is only 91 square feet. It's 1.3% of the total facade area. So the signs as proposed are uniform in content, appropriate in size and scale and visibility for the facades that they are mounted on, in my opinion. Now, the last criteria of your comprehensive sign ordinance is the positioning of the sign within the architectural framework of the building. So I would like to go back to look at this exhibit, which is the first one, which is A3, and to illustrate to you that the framework of the facade has these brick piers or pylons or whatever you might want to call them, and I believe that's the primary entrance and exit for the store, and that sign is actually appropriate in size and scale and character for its particular location within the parking lot. The same thing holds true for the sign that faces Main Street. The framework is at the corner of the building or at the end of the building at this location, and it is quite visible from motorists traveling westbound on Route 4. But again, it's a small sign, it's only 130 square feet, and I believe it is appropriate, and it does fit within the architectural character and the framework of the facade.
Let me ask you this question in terms of the motorists approaching on the highways. Is there a benefit to having signs that can be read?
Absolutely. It'll promote, the purpose of zoning would be advanced with the promotion of the free flow of safety and traffic and the visibility. The key is the visibility of these particular signs being legible for passing motorists and, of course, pedestrians. I think there's too many pedestrians on the street at that location, but...
Thank you. Continue.
And then the very last one is the sign that faces the west, or that's located on the west facade, which is visible for the motorists traveling eastbound on Route 4. They will be able to see the building, will have that identification at that location, and of course, that's a small sign, it's only 91 square feet. So I believe all of the signs are appropriately positioned within the vertical framework of the facades that they are attached to, and I believe that what we have illustrated promotes and supports the criteria of the ordinance.
And can you just, I know, I don't want you to repeat all of that, but do the factors you identified, the safety, the visibility of the architect, do they also support a C2 variance?
Yes, they do. The variances for the three signs on the somewhat irregular shaped building on this uniquely shaped piece of property can be granted as strict adherence to the zoning regulations would not be appropriate for the size and scale of the building. So basically, your ordinance calls for smaller signs. Your comprehensive design guidelines, or the ordinance part, allows you, as the planning board, to, based on testimony and based on expert advice, to identify that the signs are going to be complementary to and be harmonious with the building, and therefore be in character with the commercial part of the zone in your community. It is also important to note that relief cannot be granted unless it can be granted without substantial detriment to the intent and purpose of the zoning plan or the zoning ordinance. And it is my opinion that these variances proposed and will advance the purposes of zoning, and that the municipal land use law would be advanced for reasons of safe visibility for the public, aesthetics, creating a desirable visual environment, and promoting the comprehensive design considerations of your ordinance. And that, in my opinion, that the benefits of those items that I just enumerated would far outweigh any detriments that might be perceived.
Thank you. I don't have anything else.
Does anyone on the board have any questions for this, John?
Go ahead. No, please.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
If we look at A2 and your floor plan on A2, particularly the west side, I just want to jump on that pylon sign that we had approved. Can you give us, are we out there?
I don't think that is...
That was question for you. On the pylon sign?
Yeah, I just wanted to get a feel for where it was going to go.
We may be able to tell you that.
I have a site plan, but I wasn't prepared to testify to this, and I don't know if the pylon sign is actually illustrated here.
I think when we came back last time, we addressed the pylon sign, because I remember the mayor was very...
Yes, we did.
In 2012, you appeared before the board, and
I don't want him to come back. If he can't
I just
answer...
want to see where it's going to go. And
I'll tell you,
the floor plan.
if I could give you, I'll tell you, you can't tell by this floor plan where it's going to go. Because it's on the site plan, it's located at the entrance, closer to the old Total Wine, off of Main Street.
I thought it was on the corner.
Was there two?
That's what I thought it was, too.
Were there two of them?
No,
No, there's
I believe
only
it was just one.
The monument sign.
I was thinking it was going to, and again, that angled right there, I thought that's where it was going to go, and I just...
What date is it?
With the west Right, it was basically for the highway there, along marginal road that goes into Bogart, and you make that hard right. And I just wanted, with the west elevation, with the Total Wine being in the
Are you doing the
corner.
pylon sign? Oh, I have
Based on
someone else
A2.
who can maybe answer the question. Dan is from DCI, they're the installers of the sign.
PlanningBoard.
Could you identify your name and your full name and the company you work with?
Dan Costello, DCI signed it on.
Before you, can you spell your last name, please, sir?
CASTILLL.
CASTILLL. I presume, Mr. Carson, that you want the witness sworn?
Yes, please.
Sir, do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And having stated your name, your company, you're with ImageWorks?
DCI sign. DCI sign. We're a local installer. And we're also manufacturing the pilot sign.
Do you have any affiliation with ImageWorks, the folks
The
who...
subcontractor.
They're shipping us the wall sign.
You're the subcontractor, and your role is to build?
We're installing the wall signs for ImageWorks. And we're manufacturing and installing the pylon signs, two of them, for March Associates.
Two?
There's a V-shaped one at the corner of Route 4, and there's a single...
I remember one, I don't remember the second one.
I thought when we came back in 2012, there was another one added.
It was an additional pylon sign.
So there was
There were two.
There were two. I looked back at the, resolution.
Must have wore us down.
It's a big piece of property.
It's a big pylon.
I remember the one meeting went till about 1 in the morning, you wore us down that much.
That was on step.
And one goes...
I could, Kevin, this guy would have guessed
That's
it
the V
was
right there.
2 years. Oh, that's a
Yep.
V sign.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Riley.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Can you, Dan, can you just show them where the two signs are, just so the pylon signs?
This is Route 4. There's a V shape right over here behind the building.
Right.
That's one of them. And the other one goes in the curb line over here by the driveway entrance.
By the current...
By the old...
By the current total.
All right, you want to mark that?
Sure.
And that will now be...
What was I up to? This would be
A6.
Thank you. So, for the record, A6 is, it's a site plan which illustrates... Yeah, no, I'm just trying to, I can't read the date on it, it's just small.
Here, I don't see the other one. There is one here.
This is slide 1407.
Oh, yeah, right here.
Yeah, that one.
That's one.
It should have been updated since then.
Probably has a lot of dates, I can't read it.
Yeah, we can't read it, but it's the site plan.
I do have exactly...
That was not part of last...
12 foot. 12 by 8 by 24 inch.
Is that a McGowan drawing?
Yes.
So this one was not as high as that one.
Site plan dated July 20, 2007, revised to May 4, 2012.
That would be right.
Now, this is like here. Okay. So you have 12-foot columns like here. It's like here. That's what he just described. Okay, that's what
One other thing, not that it matters because it hasn't put, but I guess the building department determined that we did not need a variance for the west sign because it's smaller than what was originally approved based upon the drawings as opposed to the resolution.
You mean on the west facade
Yes.
that's been presented here tonight?
Yes.
Our building department determined that?
Yes.
We actually have a,
The zoning officer, not the building.
Well, who did you get the permit from?
I don't know, someone from my office, you kind of told me that.
So you don't have a copy of it with you?
I was under the impression that we were only coming to discuss two signs.
Well, we came on all three just in case. I don't want to, we're not trying to hide anything.
Okay, that's fine.
Different interpretations, and obviously, there was some confusion on the, going back to 07.
All right, so just so the record is clear at this point, using the A3, 4, and 5, it's your testimony, Mr. Castillo, that the building department determined that the sign on A5, that is the west elevation, did not pull out a variance because it is smaller than what had been originally approved. Is that your testimony?
But we're not withdrawing the request just in case. Well, it's necessary.
I think you should just proceed on your proofs anyway without...
Right, well, our proofs are in, so.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, well, Jim has it.
I just had a question on lighting. The lighted signs, particularly the one facing the west, which there is some houses back there, across from the apartments, are those going to be on timers, or are they going to be illuminated 24 hours a day?
They'll probably be on the ordinance standard requirement of going off at 11 o'clock, is what I understand. It will not impact negatively any of the apartments which are way back there.
I'm not worried about the apartment, but there's houses across the street.
But those are commercial.
There's only one commercial. Beyond that, they're homes.
Two commercial. Okay. But this is the facade right here, the west facade. That's where the smallest sign is, the 91 square foot sign.
All right, but as you go up toward the end of the building,
Here,
and then you go across the street, there are homes. Well, directly across the street.
Okay, yeah, directly across here. But I thought two were commercial uses.
I think the first two are,
Yeah.
but then you start getting into residential. And I believe that those homes still equal out to the end of that property. It's got to be close. So the question I would have is, I want to make sure the lighting doesn't impact any of those homes
In my
back there.
opinion, it was not.
You mean on Boulder?
Yeah, at the end of Boulder.
On Boulder?
Yeah.
You don't have any lumens or illumination?
I know that all of the lights are LED.
Yeah, that's the way of
Lit.
This is
Yeah.
They're all within the requirements of the National Electric Code, which the building department requires that we address all of those particular issues. To tell you that I could give you the luminosity of the signs, I wouldn't be able to do that. I could just tell you that the transformers are LED power supply, voltage is 120 volts. And I don't believe, if you've seen any of the new Total Wine signs, they'll have any negative impact to property owners or adjacent.
Right, and this is going to be on the far Route 4 section of the
Yeah,
building anyway, so,
that's
okay.
correct.
It's going to be on that section, that
Right.
straight before it
Right,
makes
yeah.
that hook.
Correct.
So there are no houses over there?
Right.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
I know we'll go for 11 anyway, as per the ordinance,
I
correct?
believe that's the requirement.
Are the changes to the logo reflected on the monument signs at all? But there's no change to them all? Because that
Answer
would
that
be,
question.
it'd become part of the application, right?
The pylon
logo
signs you're talking
changed?
about?
Yeah.
Well, the pylon signs, the concept we had is that, aside from the pylon sign being what it is, that you'd be able to slide a placard of whatever businesses are in the mall. So, I mean, that's just, you know, it's only going to be a little slide placard that goes on the front, so they can just monitor. I mean, that's not, I think it can hold 6 or 8.
Whatever
we made.
dimensions are,
Yeah.
it is.
So it's just going to be like a little placard that you just, like these things here, like, you know. and
Just
you
with the
drop
name on it.
Right, and you just
Letters.
drop it into the pylon sign.
No grapes.
Sour grapes.
I have one more. My main concern is for the eastern sign.
Okay?
It looks like we're going out another 8.5 feet in width. Is that correct from what was approved? From what I have here,
Yeah.
it's 15 feet?
Yeah.
Now we're looking for, so 8.5 feet
Yeah, so
more.
but it's appropriately sized within the framework as your ordinance clearly, defines. It's harmonious with the architectural intent of the facade. And that's the reason for, its size. And again, you have to look at it that it's only 2% of the facade area. In some communities, they allow 10% of your facade area. Signs that could be gigantic.
That's why we're in River Edge.
I hear you.
It's a nicer sign too, quite frankly,
Yeah.
than the other one.
I mean, and it does address all the criteria of your comprehensive sign design guidelines, as I call them.
What would be the negative impacts to the property if that part of this variance wasn't approved?
You would not be able to identify what building that is as you are coming along.
So if it was 3 feet smaller, nobody would know what it was, as opposed to that 3 feet extra?
In my opinion, the signs, these people have done image works. They're the sign designers, if you will, and they know the exact letter size comprehension, visibility from distances and things of that nature. So in my opinion, it's appropriately sized for the image that's where it is located in the framework. And I call the 2 vertical pylons, if you will, these pieces of the facade that stick out, I call that the framework, which is defined in the ordinance in that light.
Where would it be visible from? Because there's a building east, there's
Well,
a main
actually,
building east
no,
of it.
it's visible on Main
Okay.
Street. Once you turn, if you're coming like I come down Kindercamack Road, make the right onto Main Street, I see that right in front of me.
Okay,
That's what the whole thing is about,
okay.
and that's the principal entrance.
Well, to be honest, the traffic on Main Street will not be going very quickly. I mean, right now, it's slow, almost at a stop most of the time. A little smaller sign, I don't think will make much of a difference in terms of visibility on that street.
Well, again, I have to suggest that it is an appropriate location, it is appropriately sized, the scale and the character of it does fit the guidelines of your ordinance, and that's why we're presenting it.
May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Is this store the first store that will deploy the new logo, the new brand? Other stores in the chain have already been changed, and eventually the website will be changed, because the website still has the old
Yeah.
logo.
I don't know, but this is the sign they're using now in their stores. And that's what this whole thing is about.
What would happen if that wasn't approved tonight? Would they not be part of the chain?
Get fired.
Well,
Yeah, you'll get fired.
Before we, if I could just make a comment, before we get off on the, I mean, I think it's not so much about the size of the sign. I think if you look at what's presented here this evening and what's on the original spec from 2007, it's changed the configuration of the sign. I think that's what's important to realize here. You went from having total wine staggered with the grapes on the right there, to what I feel personally is a little bit more pleasing with going across.
Well, again, the only aspect that I'm concerned with is that it's 8.5 feet wider. And it is, as the attorney testified earlier, going to be the centerpiece of our town. And when we're dealing with that, we have to be very cautious. I mean, I was one of two people on the board.
Making it a straight line rather than stacking.
Well, you're not stacking it, because originally it was Total Wine and More. That's the way the original sign was.
Right.
Didn't have the spirits and beer.
If I may address that, the sign that we're proposing is shorter than what was originally proposed,
I see that.
and it's only 3 feet longer. We're asking for the variance of like 3 feet. 20 feet is allowed, 3 feet would be the additional.
But it's still 8.5 feet longer than what was approved. Right.
Right, but if you look at, once again, drawing on A2 from 2007, that east elevation sign is now consistent with the south elevation and the west elevation signs that they had imposed as being across.
But I'm not even overly concerned about the other two signs, because they don't affect our downtown, what we're trying to accomplish down there. But this particular sign may or may not directly impact the view of what our downtown is going to be.
I would think, though, if you look, if you take it and just look at what is on the 07 A2, how it's stacked, I think this sign is a little more pleasing. And the fact, too, is if you look at and I don't know if we marked it here, but the original, if we look at A1 and we go with the south elevation of the new retail center, we spec'd out those signs to being, what is it, 3, I have it here, up here. What do we have the signage spec'd out? I think it was 3 feet by 20 on if we look at A1.
2 by 20.
Is it 2 by 20?
2 by 20.
Yeah, it's 2 by 20. So, I mean, 20 seems to be the agreed-to length somewhere around there for those things. So, I mean, if it's length we're talking about,
I think also that, I mean, it's not, it fits within the building. It's a huge building, and that's why you have the comprehensive sign ordinance, realizing that, 20 feet is the max on buildings a third the size could have a 20-foot sign. And so, to go another 3 feet when it's less than 2% of the whole building, I think it is appropriate for the building and the architecture. That's why we're here.
Can I ask the question that I think the board is kind of getting to? Can I ask it in a little different way? Your testimony is that on A3, the east elevation, and A4, the south elevation, the signs are 130 square feet.
Correct.
Yet on the side that faces Route 4, where you testified about the variance requirements, safety and visibility and what have you, that sign is less square footage-wise than the signs on the A3 and A4. So how do you reconcile that differential?
I can reconcile the larger sign on the Main Street facade by saying that faces Route 4 for the westbound traveling motorist. And if somebody sees and identifies and recognizes that sign, it's a quick right-hand turn off to get to Main Street. There's a right turn lane that would provide access to Main Street, and then they would be able to make a left turn into the site, into the shopping center site.
This is also the entrance of this is the building, so that's also why it's larger.
Would it be fair to say, too, though, if you look at, as Arthur pointed out, if you look at A5, you simply don't have the room to do a larger sign there.
Right.
I mean, the way it's, I mean, you can't, there's much more room on A4 and A3.
I guess my final point that I'm going to make on this is twofold. One is that we spent a lot of time on these signs, and we granted significant variances, including giving them the second pylon sign and so forth. We also can't ignore the fact that we'll have a new application coming in next month for a sign variance for CVS. And anything that we give Total Wine, certainly CVS is going to want to reciprocate the same way. And I just don't know how prudent it is at this juncture, after all the work we put into this and all the hearings we've had on this in the past, to go, to start changing things again.
I have to weigh in on that one, though, Jim. I've not seen the CVS, and you folks have this manila envelope in front of you tonight. That's the CVS application. I've not seen or reviewed it yet. But I have to caution the board that application has to be judged on its own merits.
Even though it's on the same property?
Even though it's on the same property. It's a separate application. It's not before you tonight. None of us, I think, knows what CVS is going to be looking for or not going to be looking for. So I would just ask that you just kind of look at that next month or whatever.
And the point I was only making was, can somebody conceivably say, well, you did this for Total Wine, and you gave them a bigger sign, why can't we?
They can make that argument, but it's within the discretion of this board, once you hear the proofs on the CVS application, to determine how you wish to proceed with them. So you can't really apples and oranges in that sense.
Is there a formula, though, that says that, like, you simply cannot take this square footage of a sign and put it on the current Total Wine because it would be in conflict of something that we have, or is it just you'd have to get a variance?
We have an ordinance, and the ordinance defines what is permitted and what's not permitted. And if an applicant such as this applicant comes before you and says, well, it may not be entirely permitted, but we think that there are reasons for why you should permit this particular result, that's proving out a variance. That's what that's about.
I would also just point out, and I know you still have to hear, other people may have questions, and I'm sure you're planning on some comment. It's 29 square feet less than what's approved, so there is some give here. We're just trying to make it better aesthetically for the building, and so we'd ask that you consider that also.
And I'm sorry, Vito, I was just wondering, Mr. Castillo, if you could get out A2 on that easel and show the board where that pylon sign is going to be roughly. No, right on that one.
At the corner.
It's going to be right in there.
One here,
and the one's way over, right. But that one there, on the left side of that, where is the signage on, that's the west side of the building, I believe?
Yes.
Where is that west sign going to be in relation to the pylon?
The west side is going to be on this facade that I'm pointing to at this location, and that V-shaped sign is almost at the at the corner of the building.
Basically, we're going to be right on top of it.
Right above it.
Yeah, right above it.
Right above it.
Well, the pylon sign is for the permanent people in there. Plaza. In other words,
and then that's all the tenants.
No, I understand what a pylon sign does. I'm just, to me, these diagrams, that are being shown, don't reflect the true, what the ultimate result is going to be, because that pylon sign is going to be right smack dab nearby or below the Total Wine and More sign on the west elevation.
And if I remember, the argument for the pylon sign was visibility from the highway.
That was the whole rationale.
Yeah, that's what we thought, but if you look at that, was it 24? I mean, is it almost literally? The pylon sign is 24 feet high.
24 feet.
And whereas, according to the 07 spec on A2, I apologize, I think.
18 according to this, right. It's a L-shaped 18-foot high, according to...
Oh, that's right, the second, this one's larger, it's 18. Yeah, so it's basically, I mean, you would think, hindsight's always 20/20, that it would be more up here.
I would have thought, but
This way it would alert people, because there is going to be...
That's a good point.
There's going to be a back entrance. You would think the pylon sign would be more where that angle was, because A, there's more property there. B, it would give off some light because it's rather dark, and it would serve as to let people know who use that rear entrance, that, that's going to dump out into Boulder. I don't quite understand why we...
Well, I don't know if the pylon sign has directionals on it.
You mean, no, not direct, but just saying it would serve a better
We can't change the
purpose.
location anyway.
I know, we're just pontificating.
Right. No, I was just trying to see what the reality of this is going to be if, I'm not prejudging it, but assume this board grants the relief that's being sought by this applicant, you previously granted the pylon sign. I was just trying to visualize what that's going to look like on the west elevation. That's really what I was
No, the
trying.
west sign is being reduced by the current application.
The west sign that was approved in 2007
Right.
is being reduced.
Yes.
Right, no, I understand that. I understand that clearly. I'm just trying to visualize
I understand.
what the west elevation is going to look like with the Total Wine and More sign here at the top of the structure,
About 35 feet.
with the pylon sign essentially in front of it. And I think that's really
Well,
what it's
excuse me if I'm corrected, but the pylon sign is not going to be on the west elevation, it's going to be by the south elevation. At least that's what it's showing in the plan.
It's faces south and west.
Oh, so it's going to be like a...
It's a V.
It's a V.
If you look on that site
Okay.
plan, it clearly indicates
Right,
a
okay.
V.
That's one.
Okay, right, I know what the other one is, okay, but yeah, that's, okay, all right.
Yeah, it just seems...
Going to be a V?
I'm leaning towards what John said.
This doesn't look like a V.
That's a different sign. I think that's
But we
the one
can't,
that-
again, it's done, unfortunately, I mean, that's...
You can't change that, and you can't change the back sign because it's smaller. So he's already got a permit for that. So the only thing we're really, we're talking about two signs, and that's it.
But to, the board's point, when they say this is going to be the benchmark of this, I mean, I do think that the plans that these gentlemen have come before does make it look a little more aesthetically pleasing, rather than being stacked. I like it straight across. I think it's, centered. I just think it will make the building more attractive. That's my own personal opinion.
It's not a capricious decision. This was a decision made in a board meeting. So even if they had installed the previously approved sign, it's safe to think that they would have come in front of us to change the sign to comply with new directives from the corporation.
Their new branding, absolutely.
So, number one. And number two, I mean, we're looking at signs, so please, guys, look at it in the context of where the sign is being placed. You can't look at it as if it was a lollipop sign, which adorn a certain highway by the name of Route 46, not too far from where we live. I mean, Mr. Santini has certainly earned these oaths by hammering into us that the sign is part of an elevation and that the sign is within two pylons, a very determined area, and that I mean, and granted, beauty is always in the eye of the beholders here, especially signs, but they're not going to compromise the certain architectural value that this building is bringing to our town by putting a schlock sign on it. So, I mean, I appreciate the fact that, we're regurgitating and ruminating and going back and forth, which is part of the reason we're here, but, it comes to the point where you gotta let it go. So unless we hear something completely detrimental from our professional, I mean, I don't have any issue in granting the approval in this application, personally.
Regine?
So, my first point is that the chairman had asked me if I concurred with the calculations made on it after hearing the testimony. I do. I think that this board's review of the sign application, the council is perfectly correct. I think you should take guidance by your multi-tenant building ordinance and the four criteria that the applicant has testified to, particularly number 3 and number 4, which pertain to the portion of the sign on the facade, and they're around 2% of all the signs. Most signs that you'll see are between 2 and 4%, so you get an indication that it's appropriately sized. The second portion of the fourth criteria of your ordinance is how it fits into the architecture of the building. And from my perspective, I think it's the most important. And I believe Mr. Santini has done a very great job of identifying the architectural elements that are important in the building, the columns, and how the sign fits in between those columns. The one thing you don't want to see is a sign that's going to overlap the columns or hide the architectural details of the building. So I think from those two criteria, the signs that they've proposed are appropriately sized and scaled and fit into the architectural design of the building. And those are, I think, from my perspective, two big criteria when you're reviewing design variances. The other issue I just want to raise is that in my memorandum on page 2, there's a number of variances that I believe were granted prior, but they're not delineated in the 07 ordinance. So I think maybe just for clarification purposes, we identify them by section to make sure that it is truly granted, so those variances are granted if the board is going to approve the design package and identify the deviations and so forth. In the testimony tonight, there's probably 6 or 7 sections of the design ordinance that should be identified. That I believe, just the testimony in 07, they were granted, but they weren't identified specifically that section.
Isn't there a section in the ordinance concerning the number of colors in any given sign?
In one sign?
With the Chinese restaurant, we went.
Yeah,
3 or 4?
Yeah.
4.
Was it 4?
And so how does that pertain to, I guess, future signs in that development, right? So they'll all have to either be blue, green,
this one is
red, and
5.
purple, right?
You're right.
I was looking for it. I just printed out 53, 54, and 55.
I didn't see it.
I think it's...
3 or 4. Yeah, you're right. We went back and forth.
Which is open now.
Is it open?
Yeah, I think it is.
We weren't invited to cut the ribbon.
I heard it was good.
Yeah, the elevator.
So if it's a rainbow.
Is it up and running?
I don't know.
Logo, they can't have it.
Those front
Certain
side was
colors.
missing.
Yeah.
I didn't see the flag. Where's the flag?
What is that? The
grapes, right?
the outline.
The outline.
Yeah, the outline.
Oh, we got to
Someone
see
that curb cut too.
Would you believe it? It's like, it's a different way, but it's okay.
Go back.
All right, so, what else?
Or just regime change. Second color.
I guess not to prolong this, but I think Jim touched on it with the changes in the lettering. I think he touched on a certain, a question of image or character maybe, that it says spirits, beer, and more as opposed to just more.
It's an addition.
Is that a non-issue, or is that worth
But it's
considering?
their decision.
Right.
Okay, so it
It
is what it is?
I'm sure some good attorney will push that into the First Amendment, freedom of expression.
Yeah.
I mean, really.
Not that I have any prejudice. I mean, I like all three.
Look at this motion.
It's the most abused amendment.
Right, section 41649, colors, maximum number of colors permitted in the sign shall be 4, black and white colors are included.
So what does that leave you, 3 then?
5.
Well, if they include white, then you're right.
Well, I think, yeah, we had 5, but that's what was approved. There's no change in the code.
Again, this goes back to the fact that the resolution does not indicate
It looked
what
different.
variance.
Was here in
You too?
Which is what else we have.
All right, so here's what I'll do, too. If I'll check this, I don't think I have the original plans, the original approved site plan, but if you wish, based on what Brigitte is saying, I will include in this resolution the definitive, I'll review the transcript, because you did send me that. I haven't really gone through it, but I'll review the transcript and incorporate into this resolution the sections of the ordinance contemplated by that prior approval, so that it's clearly delineated and with no issue. I mean,
Great.
that's what gave rise to this to begin with, so.
That would be very helpful.
Okay, I can do that.
That's a good thing.
Okay, any other questions? Do we want to open this to the public?
Yes, we have to.
I need a motion, at this point, we'll open this meeting to the public. I need
So
a
moved
motion.
to the public.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
With that, is there anyone in the public who would like to make any comments or have any questions for these witnesses? Not seeing any, I ask for a motion that we close.
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Thank you.
Do you have any further witnesses, Mr. Karsten?
No.
So who
You
wants
want to make the closing statement?
No, I think I've taken enough of your time. I think we've heard from the professionals, and I hate to quibble over 3 feet, but it is very important to my client. I don't think it's offensive, and I think we actually are reducing the size of the prior approval, and I rely upon the opinions of both our expert as well as your expert.
Mr. Carson, Tasha said, no, you were not considering. Never mind.
It's
I'm
a
kidding.
bad habit by lawyers.
Indeed, indeed. Okay.
Okay, with that, do I have,
Go ahead. Want me to move?
yeah, go ahead.
So I'll move that we accept application number 2014-02 as deliberated and with any amendments in terms of citing the correct...
That won't be an amendment.
That
That will be part of the resolution.
Okay.
I will expedite it.
And as submitted and as deliberated here tonight.
Are there any conditions that...
Not on my part.
that,
But do we want, what Brigitte mentioned, with the
What?
variances, do we want that?
But he's doing it. It's
I'm
part of the
gonna do
resolution.
that.
That's what we
No,
do.
I'll just do that as a matter of course. That's not a condition for the
Okay.
applicant. So I have a motion from Mr. Aquafreda. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Kiritz. Mr. Aquafreda.
Yes.
Mr. Arakelian.
Yes.
Mr. Behrens.
Yes.
Mr. Dewar.
Yes.
Mr. Glass.
Yes.
Mr. Grasso.
Yes.
Mr. Monroe.
Yes.
Ms. Boland.
Yes.
And Mr. Kiritz.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you for accommodating us tonight. This is the 90?
Right.
Do you want to keep the... Do you want the...
No, you can,
Hold on to it.
you can hold on to them. I think it's the procedure of this board that the applicant will hold on to them.
Thank you. Now we know why Mr. Carson is
I'm here for another 4 years. Feel free to come up anytime.
Yeah. You know, I'm on the planning board in my town.
Don't be
And I've been trying to get off for 2 years. I've been on for about 20. And the mayor keeps saying, please stay on, please stay on. And they promised me I have one more application, a subdivision, which is 100 people in the room. He said, after this, you're going to retire. And it's not, it's tough, as you know.
I enjoy it. When I finish this, it'll be my 20th.
Oh, but Bridget, do you want to talk about your,
Thank you.
do you want to talk about your memo?
You're not on that.
Okay. I'll take it.
Well, I do want to go through a bunch of things real quick, too.
We have some stuff to do, but Bridget has to leave.
Oh, okay.
No.
Good.
Thank you. The sooner we get rid of you, the better off we are, okay?
That's me.
You,
For prosperity.
Mark, you and Bridget are coming to mayor and council, right?
Well, I'm certainly coming.
Yes, on with that. Happy day.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Auf Wiedersehen.
So diverse.
Huh?
All right, we're still on the record, right?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
I don't want to cross over. Do you want to have some of your discussion points first?
Let me just get a little organized here, and then we can move on. So that's total one. All right.
Yeah, I heard it's good. You done this
Before I go into a discussion of mine, I sent all of you a copy of my memorandum that I wrote to the mayor and council concerning the manner in which the historic preservation element of the borough's master plan was allegedly adopted. That was dated April 17th. I think you got it on the dais now. Because you're our only liaison, Vito, I was curious.
Here comes the legal.
I was curious as to, why this came up with the mayor and council, because the adoption of a master plan or any element thereof is really a function of the planning board exclusively.
There are applications, I don't know if it's not an application, the Historic Commission is considering, we've been considering the placement of historic designations on residential properties. And that's something that had already started when I was elected to the council. In fact, Historic Preservation or Commission representative appeared in front of mayor and council twice. And council
For what, though? Why?
to tell us what they were doing, and also to let us know that they were considering the placement of historic designations on certain
There were two properties
two
involved.
properties, the same two properties.
Right.
Some council member wanted to make sure that the historic component of the master plan would meet any legal challenge, for lack of a better word, and that it was something that could be relied upon. Because I think, my personal opinion, I think the majority of the members on the council, as well as the mayor, were not part of the council and the mayor when the historic component went into effect. And sometimes we're also discovering that anything from the master plan as a whole to individual components of the zoning ordinance are due for a shaking up and maybe rewriting so they're more attuned to the times. Personal opinion again, I'm not talking about. So that's what brought about, and then somebody raised their hand and said, but this will go to planning board. Let's get the opinion of certainly the planner, the planning board attorney, and the planning board, and then see what their recommendations are, and send it back to mayor and council. So I got your memo that basically says we have some work to do.
This board has work
Then this
to do.
board will make the recommendation to the other gathering, mayor and council.
No.
No, then I'm incorrect, please.
Yes. The determination of a master plan, the passage, adoption of a master plan, is exclusively within the province of this board. Mayor and council has nothing to do with it.
Perhaps make a recommendation to mayor and council that the historic component of the master plan is as good as it's going to get.
Not even that.
Not even that.
Because the way this was couched way back when, this historic preservation, it was couched, it was intended to be an amendment to the master plan. So it's not a question of us, this board, referring, or the mayor and council referring to this board and we doing a report back to the mayor and council saying, yes, you should do this. That's not the way it goes. That's not the proper manner in which to proceed. The proper manner in which to proceed, as my memo suggests, is that this board makes the determination as to whether or not the historic preservation element as proposed should be adopted as an element of the master plan. But it's totally within your purview. The mayor and council's got nothing to do with it. And that's what I'm going to say when I appear before the mayor and council.
You do that. Because obviously there seems to be some confusion.
And that's fine.
The subject matter.
And that's fine. But then that begs the question of...
Sometimes I think the master plan is seen as an ordinance.
It's not.
Of course it's not.
Yeah, it's not.
But I'm saying sometimes in some it gets confused because obviously, mayor and councils promote ordinances.
Right.
So sometimes I think that, to me, it's not a fine line, it's a very
Crisp,
obvious
sharp,
line.
right.
Maybe you tend to lose the details and you start to mix things up. So when I refer to your mayor, when I said, we have work to do,
This board.
we here, yes.
So, but that also, let's cut right to the chase, guys. What's going to happen is the Historic Preservation Commission, or whatever they are, is going to come back before you at some point down the road, and they're going to make a presentation about what they think ought to be the historic preservation element of the master plan. It's your responsibility as a board to review everything in connection with the master plan, including the historic preservation element of it.
Okay.
And if you, and you're going to hear all of this, this is what this board is required to do under the law. So if this board determines that which is presented to you by the Historic Preservation Committee is reasonable and sound and proper from a planning perspective, then you will adopt that after public comment and the opportunity, the public has the opportunity to hear, and the way the public gets notice of this has its own requirements under the MLUL as well, and those need to be observed. Those were not observed way back when that was originally proposed. There's no evidence that I was able to find that suggested that there had been notice to the public of that. And, in our country, due process is pretty number one, I'd say, and that consists of notice of something happening against you and an opportunity to be heard about that which is happening. The public was not given that notice, and it was not given that opportunity. It's a constitutional violation. If somebody were to challenge the borough on the adoption, the borough would lose hands down. So what I'm proposing to you is part of your function is to serve as the expert planner for the mayor and council. You serve as the devil and the angel on each of the mayor and council's shoulders to say this should happen, this shouldn't happen when it comes to planning issues. So you're going to be called upon to engage that part of your responsibility under the law. And my guess is that these people from HPC are going to want to do that sooner rather than later. So I'm just kind of giving you the heads up that that's what's coming down the pike.
Can we put that on one of our agendas then?
On here?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, this board...
Because you set the agenda.
I have some measure of control over the agenda, but I was going to do that, but I wanted to discuss it first with this board and let you know that this is what was happening, and then hear the recommendations, or at least the discussions from the mayor and council.
I'm just wondering if it might be prudent to wait until we receive formal notice from the historic folks that they want to come out.
Well, my guess, Jim, is that somebody's going to be there at the mayor and council on Monday.
It's very possible.
Yeah, so that's going to happen, whether it's formal, whether they send me a letter and say we want this to be included on the agenda, or somebody says to me, you know what, let's get this done, because one way or the other, this is going to get done.
Well,
on my watch, it's going to get done properly.
I totally understand that, that we're responsible for the plan, for the plan for the town. So, if that's a component that needs to be looked at, we can look at it. There's nothing saying we have to approve it or not approve it. We have to look at it.
We have to correct, according to Art's memo, we have to correct.
Well,
we have to...
There are two...
No, I'm referring to the defects in terms of public...
Oh, yeah, that has to be corrected.
Okay, so that's a given. That's a given. So just...
But what Jim's point, I think what Jim is saying, is that we can hear all of this, and then you can hear it and then decide whether or not you want to include a historic preservation element as an element of the master plan. You may say, we don't want to include it, and it's an optional, the historic preservation element is optional under the law. If you don't want to do it, it's within your purview not to do it. So you have that power.
To a certain extent, you just did a dry run of what, part of what you may be telling mayor and council when you appear in front.
What I'm saying now, absolutely.
To a certain extent, okay? Can mayor and council request that that item be placed on an agenda of the planning board? Or suggest, I mean, whatever the appropriate
They can
word
request
is.
it. They can request it.
But that doesn't mean it's going to go on the agenda.
Well, look, there
I'd rather
is...
be proactive than reactive, so, and obviously, it's something that we need to look at.
And that's fine. So I don't think that there's an intention on the part of this board to resist.
Oh, no,
hearing it.
but I think there is enough minds and enough variations on this board of opinions that we can tackle the historic element of a master plan, whether it's advisable.
And I think you can take it to the bank that there will be several different opinions of what that should be.
Fine.
When a presentation is made, because there will
What
be
the
people...
element should be?
There'll be people whose houses are directly affected by this, and I don't know how far I should go with it, but quite frankly, if the historic preservation gets their way and designates different residences in town as historic homes, it really diminishes a lot, many times, the value of that property, because you can't do anything to that property once it's, you have to, anytime you want to do anything to that property, you have to go back to the Historic Commission and get permission. So it's a significant burden to those people who own homes that are of historic value to the borough of Woodbridge.
Art, is it proper that we get into this kind of detailed conversation?
Technically, it's not proper, because there's nothing before us. Jim's expressing an opinion, and I'm not going to shut him down for doing so.
I don't think it's a problem being on record, we're just discussing this.
Came before us.
Right.
Well, actually, they didn't come before us. No one showed up from the Historic Commission when we talked about it the last time.
I'm sorry, say it again, Tom?
We did discuss the houses and...
Yeah, but no one from the Historic Preservation Commission was here. None of them showed up. We had the owners of the house.
Right.
But the commission, they didn't have a representative here at all.
Well, is it fair to say that I would have to think there is already an element within our master plan, it just was not done properly?
Yeah.
Because I know we addressed it...
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. My research revealed that the original element had 22 discrete properties contained within it. When the ordinance finally made it into the ordinances of the borough of River Edge, I think there was only like 13.
Right.
And when this board in an earlier incarnation heard it, it was some other number that it contains. There's not been a concise, consistent connection with all of these properties. So I think having a do-over is probably the best thing for everybody, so that it becomes ultimately clear, A, that the public has notice and an opportunity to be heard, and there is a record that is created in connection with the ordinance that's already adopted.
I think maybe you made that point where at least like 22 sites that have been around for 20-plus years, how come we're only targeting like these few?
I don't,
it's so long ago.
I think what it was that they wanted to include these. These two properties had not been included before, and HPC was endeavoring to include these two properties as part of the element.
I think this might have even came up with the approval of the townhouse that Newman did, with that building in the front.
Yes.
I think that's when this was discussed, and that's got to be 10 years ago.
Right, but were they even a commission back then?
The Historic Commission has been around for a long time.
Right, but I don't know if they were, has it always been a commission?
I know that the reason that building is still standing today is because of them. So they had to be around then.
Well, you and I think, were here for that.
Right, yeah, I was here for that, sure, I remember.
Windows.
And the Historic Commission came up and they wanted specific windows, and they wanted, so, yeah. You know, it's certainly something that I agree with Arthur, we need to, as a board, we need to figure out how we're going to address it, and then we need to address it, and we need to hear from the people who own those homes, as well as the Historic Commission, and maybe even some council people are going to come up and speak to us, which wouldn't be a bad thing.
I will
At the
tell
end of
you
the day,
that in other communities, the amendment of the master plan is a big thing.
Paramus, right
And-
now, yeah.
That's right. And it lasts, the hearings and the discussions and what goes on about that can pour over 2, 3, 4, 5 meetings, just so that everybody gets their
We'll get it
due.
done in one. Let's stay up 2 to 3 in the morning.
Well, that's how it happened when they originally did this. It was like, you know, there was nobody in the audience that was like, bang, 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 let's go.
Big bucket of Joe, we'll just get it done.
But, you know, there's costs and expense associated with this too, because it has to be, you know, somebody's got to take care of the mailing and the publication and all of that.
So, that's how much I know.
Vito has a check.
Yeah, Vito has what?
You ready to check?
Oh, yeah, sure. I just wrote one to state of New Jersey.
So, I guess, my opinion is the way we should leave it is, let Arthur go up Monday, see what they have to say, let them come back and report
It's
to us.
Arthur and Bridget.
And Bridget. I'm addressing Arthur because Bridget
She,
ran out
not
of
that I want to minimize her role, but she has nothing to say.
Understood. Mayor and council so fit to order the yin and the yang. So we have you both there at the same time.
Do you know
That's
who
fine.
prepared that
Pardon?
element? Do you know who prepared the last historic element?
The last, what?
The one that's in question, I guess, now that we would review.
No, it was the HPC. The HPC
Oh, they
came,
made- oh,
they came to the board.
Okay.
But the way the board handled it, and I'm certainly not going to criticize any of my predecessors, but the way the board handled it was incorrect.
But it wasn't the planner who drafted it first. Not that
No,
it
I
would
think,
matter, but,
I don't know. I wasn't around. I mean, but whether a planner was involved in the HPC's report to the board, I couldn't say.
I don't believe that there was. I think,
2002?
I think at the time we had our planner, Dick Marvin, here.
Right.
Was Dick, he was on the board at one time.
He was
Yeah, I think
a
I
planner
got on the way
back
back, though, when he was
then. He's
on.
been a planner for a long time. And, you know, it might have been Costa. I don't remember. Like I said, this is 10 years ago, so
Right.
there's no
10 years
sense
ago.
beating a dead horse.
No, certainly not.
We're on task for what we're going to do. So let's just
I've
do
been
it.
trying, in my own humble way, to orient the board toward, you know, modern dealing with planning board and planning board actions and what have you.
You got his cameras.
I didn't do that.
Don't blame me, man.
Okay, so is that...
All right, so that's that, and that impacts Bridgette's memo as well on the HPC. She prepared a memo on hours of operation ordinance,
So that.
but, you know, without her being here, I don't know what to tell you.
Keep it under old business next time.
Next time we'll include
Your
it.
old business.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely needs some fine tuning. I
Okay.
believe it does need fine tuning.
Why don't, you know, it would be helpful if you feel that way, and if others on the board feel that way, maybe take a run through it between now and our next meeting. And it looks to me like, because CVS is coming up, we're going to have a meeting on May 15th. So if you could take a run through it before then and come with some...
15?
do they need approval to move into CVS, or have they obtained that? I know they're going for the signage.
I don't know what they're doing. I got this today, just like you did. I haven't even looked at it yet. so
The
I don't know.
approval-
Well, the email said that it was for comprehensive science package.
Is that what it is?
That's what the email
For
said.
signage?
Mhm.
Okay.
But the approval of the signage package does not prevent the CO from being issued so that they can move into the space. Same thing with this application.
Apparently, you guys are all getting email addresses.
I think you guys are all aware, you read the communication policy, that those will be coming down the pike. on some of the issues that Arthur addressed, I guess, at the beginning of this calendar year, about the importance of not using the personal. Also, you guys, you got the memo on the financial disclosures via email, or, electronically now?
Right. We did that last year.
Right.
Supposedly it's easier this time.
Right, so...
He hasn't sent them out yet, though. You new members, you know what he's talking about, financial
Yes.
disclosures? You have to disclose it. And
Like the
for
financial
towns,
disclosures.
and so forth, those kind of things.
So source of income.
Well, slow down, there's just two other things. I'm looking through the correspondence for the first time. There are two memos from Alan Negrin. One concerns the bond ordinance notification procedure, and apparently there is some form of bond ordinance attached to it, which I'm seeing for the first time.
I don't believe that we really have a say in the bond. We don't really control any of the budget, and we don't.
Well, we
control
do,
any-
actually.
According to past practice, we never did.
The MLUL.
Here comes the
There it
Bible.
goes. Yeah, I want to make sure everybody knows what their responsibilities are. But there is a provision.
Because we voted in the past to accept it on the basis that it really didn't affect us.
It's a memo from Arthur on 331 that kind of goes through.
Yeah. But you should be aware that we at least have some kind of role. There's a whole article devoted to capital improvement program and project review, and how that gets handled. And the planning board is integrally involved in some communities in that capital budget review. This town,
But we don't.
we don't, effectively, we don't get involved in it. But the MLUL says that we ought to be or should be on.
Was this something that we want to...
No.
Okay. And leave the Bible alone.
All right, and that too goes for the capital budget thing. I'll deal with those things if you want, and I'll let Alan know what the sense of the board is on it. And I think, I don't think there's anything else that,
Isn't there a draft RFP from Alan for circulation,
Yes.
traffic and circulation plan that we have
yes,
to approve?
this is in connection with the an RFP, I guess he's doing?
Yeah, I think,
So,
for us to approve or something.
They asked for any comments to be returned by the 23rd of May, I believe it was?
yes.
If we had any?
If you have any comments about the RFP, if there's something that,
Let me know.
you
That's
should-
for the hiring of a planner
Right.
for...
To update the circulation element of the borough's master plan to identify traffic calming, pedestrian improvement opportunities.
Which again will eventually fall on this board because it's part of the master plan?
It's an element.
Correct.
Exactly correct. That if there's going to be an amendment to the master plan for this element, because the sense I get, you remember when Ellen Bastide was on the
I'm well
board?
aware of what's going on with
All
that.
right, so my guess is that, there's a movement afoot to kind of slow things down, both in New York City as well as here at River Edge on Kindercommand. And
At a
so-
reasonable cost,
At a reasonable cost, right.
because that's what kind of pushed this thing as well. Proposed a slowdown of traffic at Continental Avenue by Memorial Park. That someone arbitrarily, in my opinion, arbitrarily designed, and then all of a sudden we were looking at a price tag of $60,000-$70,000. Went up to 80?
80.
They must have used the good
According to the
signs.
minutes, 80.
So, we have an issue.
That has nothing to do with us? That part of it? Right.
But
would
that
be an
will
ordinance
have
by
something to
ordinance?
do with us when we get through the elements of slowing down traffic. Because the purpose of that proposal was to slow down traffic.
They wanted to put curb bump outs within by the park area. So
Uh-huh.
you would actually have,
As a traffic calming or for
As a traffic
for
calming.
As a
pedestrian
traffic
safety?
calming.
But
Is it to have pedestrian cross safely?
there is a disagreement on the board as to whether that
On
is
the
a
council
good
or the
idea.
council?
On the council. So I don't know where that's going, to be honest with you. I don't believe that
That's where this is, that's what this comes from.
That's where it comes from,
All
yes.
right.
I just said that, didn't I?
Yep.
I said it.
You know, Vito, I
say it without the accent.
Due to the late hours, we try to go straight line instead of doing this all the time.
I do not believe it that, from what I've heard, and I hate saying this on the record, but I do not believe it has the support of all the people, enough people in the council to get that passed.
Well, all right.
But that's what this is about.
But that will come to us ultimately, right?
Just like they wanted to put a bike lane on Fifth Avenue, and I believe that also has went the way of defeat.
Okay.
Just thinking of the parade, July 4th parade coming down and having the speed bumps. You know, and you get a 1942 Packard and it just doesn't have enough horsepower.
Motion, you prepared to
Looking
take
for a motion
approval
to adjourn.
Yep. There you go. So moved.
Do I second it?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries.
You can click us off now.
Not quite sure the date, but for moms in the room, happy Mother's Day if we don't see each other again.
Yes, yes, yes. And we are meeting